So the purpose of this presentation was to share a bit about the Padres Pioneros, the slicker classes that we're doing, and in a minute I'll share more about what those are. But I also wanted to invite Comisión Femenil to participate in a California Climate March that we are currently planning for the whole state. So that'll come at the end. So we'll go ahead, and in the image though that you're seeing, this is actually a picture from a tree planting we did at San Fernando Elementary, where we planted about 60 climate appropriate trees. This was a project of Padres Pioneros that we did along with tree people. And I really love the picture because it's a mom and the 3 little kids, and they're helping to address climate change by helping to plant trees in their local school. Those trees, by the way, they started out like this thin, the trunk, and now it's this big, the trunk, and they're actually shading the children. So it's something very beautiful to see, yeah? So what I wanted to do though right now is just to share briefly a little bit to provide some context for the work that we're doing. And I call this Indigenous Worldview to kind of capture some of what is driving our work with this. And so this is like a foundational piece of our worldview of how, what drives our work. So one is that pretty much everything we do is multi-generational. And what that means is that we like to include the children, the parents, family members, the grandparents in the work, because we believe that we're more effective when the whole family is reached. The other thing that we believe strongly in is honoring the family's funds of knowledge, that is what they bring to the table, whether it's language, culture, you know, their spirituality, just their knowledge of the world and how to survive. All of that is very, very important, and we like to honor it. TEK stands for traditional ecological knowledge. And we know that many of the people in our communities come from, you know, Mexico, Central America, but also parts of the United States and Latin America. And they actually bring a tremendous amount of knowledge about the environment that is really very powerful in the struggle that we are in now to address climate, the climate crisis, right? The other foundational piece of our work is promoting a respect for Mother Earth, La Madre Tierra. And part of that then is, you know, how do we engage in healing the planet and ourselves at the same time? So, you know, among some of the strategies that we're using are planting trees. We are restoring areas, public lands that have been burnt, for example. We are planting native trees and grasses, and then we take care of them. We water them. We remove invasive species. So that's part of the work that Padres Pioneros is doing. But also another big piece of our work is this notion of decolonization, right? So that means that a lot of times we internalize the idea that who we are isn't good enough, or that our language isn't good enough, or our culture. But when we start to look at it as a way of thinking of decolonization, then we begin to think about what is all the important and beautiful things that we bring to the table, right? And in this image that you're seeing in front of you, this is actually Socorro Berumen. She's one of our founders. And then these are spirit animals that have special meaning for me. And then this is just a corn, and to me the corn is very symbolic because it was a gift that was brought from Mexico up to the United States, right? So it's an example how, you know, hundreds of years ago, you know, our relatives brought this gift up and shared it with their relatives in the northern part of America. And, you know, the Hopi and the Pueblo, many of the tribes then began to cultivate corn, but this corn came from Mexico, right? So it's something that I say that to say that in a way, the work that Padres Pioneros are doing now is just a continuation of what we've always been doing, right? Which is sharing our knowledge and trying to heal the planet and ourselves. Finally, the last thing I was just going to mention, we've shared this before with you, but we do provide environmental leadership classes for children in the community for the last few years, and also now for community members, right? So let's see if this is going to click over for me. Maybe it's not going to behave. I don't know. Let's see what it's doing. It's not behaving. Oh, there we go. So here's just a picture that I really love of Padres Pioneros. It's not all of us, but some of us. And you can see that this is Socorro Berumen, one of our founders, and Francis, one of our founders as well. And then this is my colleague, Stevie Reese. He's a professor of environmental justice and geography. He teaches in the Chicano Studies Department. And these are some of his students. And so we often work with CSUN students alongside the Padres Pioneros to do a lot of our work and projects. So anyway, that's a beautiful picture. I just love it. And yeah, just a nice picture. So, so a little bit of talk about what is SLICR. So SLICR actually stands for Student Leadership Institute for Climate Resilience. It was developed out of UC Irvine, their community resilience projects. And it's actually 30 hours of intensive and interactive training that is provided to groups of 10 to 20 people. So I'm sharing this with you a little bit so you have a sense of what we're talking about. It's not just one class, it's actually a lot of classes, right? 30 hours. The classes are designed, the purpose of the classes is to prepare student and community leaders to address the urgent climate crisis and environmental justice issues that we are facing in frontline communities. So for the most part, frontline communities are communities of color, low income, communities that are really facing a lot of the problems that are coming with the climate crisis. So whether it's the wildfires, it is the extreme heat and not having the capacity to escape the heat. It is in the frontline communities, we have much higher pollution burden index, right? For both our air, the water, and the soil. So all of those are aspects of being frontline communities. And I'll just give you an example. San Fernando has a Cal EnviroScreen score of about 90, meaning that 90% of the state of California has better air and water quality than does San Fernando. The same is true of Pacoima. Sun Valley is also off the charts with their Cal EnviroScreen score. So I share that with you to say that we are talking about communities that are really seriously impacted by climate justice concerns, right? Anyway, what I wanted to say a little bit about the curriculum is that the curriculum is very well designed. It's very interactive and hands-on. And you'll see a few images of that in a minute, but it does draw from folks like Noemi Klein, who's the author of This Changes Everything, Story of Stuff by Annie Leonard. So it's very high quality material. And what we did though was back in 2018, so let me see if I'll get this to click over. Good. Back in 2018, as Olivia mentioned, we were invited, so CSUN was invited to go up and receive this training, and I went up to the training, and then I learned that I could bring community members. So in the second weekend of the training, I brought up some of the Padres Pioneros leaders, including Olivia Robledo, Socorro Berumen, and others. You can see Francis there. And so they engaged in getting trained in 2018. And then we developed a plan for how to implement in our own communities. Here's another image. That's actually Olivia Robledo stepping on somebody there. No, just joking. But she's in a team, and you can see it's very interactive. This is obviously before the pandemic, but you can see us at that center getting the training. And then this past summer in 2021, at my home, then the pandemic had eased up a bit. So I actually trained a small core of the Padres Pioneros leaders at my home. We did that all summer, but meantime, we also kind of revisited the curriculum. We just sharpened it up to be able to use it with, Chicano Latino communities, right? Especially community members. We did, for example, add a community-based project to our work. So anyway, that's kind of what we did. And then in the fall of this past year, 2021, we did a training of the Padres Pioneros leaders, right? So then we implemented, right? And you see this now being done virtually. And then finally now is we've actually launched our classes, right? So we have 3 Slicker classes that we have launched. Some of them are international classes. So first, let me say that we have a local class that has about 20 people in the Pacoima, San Fernando, Silmar area. Families that we've worked with in the past, we invited them to participate. And these are all virtual now and provided at no cost to the leaders, right? I mean, to the participants. But we also have in one of our classes, and Socorro might talk about that a little later, we have in one of our classes, we have people from the local community, but also from Texas and Washington and Mexico. And then our third class is entirely international. They are about 20 people from the area of Guadalajara. So Ana is the leader of that class. So the images you're seeing down here in the lower where it says Zapopan, that's actually a screenshot from one of the classes in Mexico. And then the top right, though, is actually images of CSUN students. So I've actually been implementing this training now with about 4 different groups of CSUN students. So we're doing this simultaneously. I'm collecting data on the implementation with students, and we will be collecting data on the implementation with community members. But the results that we're getting are very interesting because once people have completed this training, they're actually very excited and interested in getting involved and helping to address the climate crisis, right? And so let's see. So I'm almost done with my bit of talking, but I did want to say one thing to you, that the work that Padres Pioneros is doing is now part of an international traveling exhibit called Climates of Inequality. And that's with funding out of, with my partner, Stevie Ruiz, Professor Stevie Ruiz. We're funded by Rutgers University to do this this exhibit that is showing the work of Padres Pioneros. So the exhibit is traveling around the world. It will be in the Los Angeles area, or Southern California area. We hope in the fall of 2023. We're looking to secure a museum for that. In the fall of 2023, CSUN students and Padres Pioneros will have the opportunity to participate in public programming. But I wanted you to know that this work is reaching an international audience, right? And then the last thing I was going to share with you was our climate march that we are planning. So let me just say that the part of how this emerged was in one of the Padres Pioneros meetings. You know, one of the mothers, Carolina, raised the issue of the recent intergovernmental panel on climate change that is from the United Nations. So their report was issued February 28th of this year. And one of the important things about that report was they were talking about frontline communities and how a lot more needs to be done to help those communities become, how do you say, more resilient, right? And that's us. And so as we were discussing that report, you know, I asked the parent leaders, I said, well, what do you all want to do about it? You know, what can we do? Because we're doing education, we're doing planting trees, we're trying to restore public lands, but what do you all want to do? And so as we talked, we came up with the idea of having a march. And at first we just thought, oh, well, we'll have a local march, maybe from CSUN to the community or the community of CSUN or something like that. But the more and more that I started to talk with people, the idea that evolved was actually an entire state involvement in a climate march. And the way that this is rolling out is that I am talking with a lot of different groups, including you folks. That's why I said I wanted to talk with you, right? And what we're doing is we hope to, we're actually using this year as a year where we're going to collect a lot of data. So we want to conduct research by going to visit communities that are frontline communities and asking the people who live in those communities to tell us how they are being impacted by climate change and environmental injustice and what they want their elected leaders to do about it. So those are the 2 things that we're focusing on. We will be involving CSUN students, but also children in the research middle school and high school folks in the research. So, and community members. So we want everybody to be involved in collecting the data. And we are going to be having a film crew with us that will make a documentary as we go around collecting this information and getting it ready to share with others. And so our idea is that during this year, we're going to tackle the Southern California area and begin this process of collecting this data and conducting this research to hear each other and understand. And then what we are hoping to do is to actually then have the march, the climate march itself, the state march next year, when we've collected at least some of the data, and we are then ready to then actually mobilize from the southern part of the state to the northern part of the state. And as we move along in communities will join us, but they will also then be sharing their research and what they want from their elected leaders. I'm going to be very blunt here, okay? We only have about 8 to 10 years to actually try to do something. This is a situation I don't think I need to tell you, you all read the newspaper, I'm sure you read your cell phones or whatever. You all know that we are in a very deep problem. And that what we also know, though, is that we currently have all the technology we need to address climate change. All the technology we need currently exists to address climate change. What we lack is the political will to do what needs to be done, which is we need to stop burning fossil fuel and coal. That's just the bottom line. But unfortunately, our elected leaders have a lot of things on their plates, and many of them are beholden to the coal and the oil and the gas companies, and they're just don't have it at the top of their list. And I don't know about you all, I'm a grandmother, and I would really like to have a world where my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren can actually survive. And the route we're going right now, that we're not on a path for survival. So we want the focus of this California Climate March to be on frontline communities. And those could include white communities that are also frontline communities and Black African-American communities. We really want to invite Indigenous and Native American communities to have a voice at these tables where we speak. And we want to hear from them what they need, what they want. And at the bottom of this, all of this is that I firmly believe that we, the people, can make a difference, that we, the people, have to take responsibility to force our elected leaders to take care of business and do their jobs. And that means to pass legislation that is actually going to seriously address the climate crisis we are in. I no longer call it climate change anymore. I'm calling it a climate crisis because that's what we're in. And by the way, it's not that 10 years from now, the bad things are going to start happening. They're already happening. You all know that the wildfires we are having are really out of control. You know that we've been in a drought in California for the good last 20 years. You all know that the hurricanes are becoming more powerful because the ocean is heating up and the hurricanes pick up the energy from the ocean and they become even stronger. You all know that there's terrible flooding, drought throughout the world. We're in a very bad situation, and the people who are most affected are poor people and people of color. So, you know, I'm looking around in this room, and I think a lot of you are also grandparents probably, or great-grandparents or parents. And I think you all care about the world because of the excellent work that you do that I have heard from Olivia. So I invite the Comisión Femenil to be a part of the climate march. I invite you to share your views on this. And I invite you to be a part of this. And yeah, and with that, we hope that we can together promote and support global solutions to save our planet. I have already been talking with all of the student groups of color at CSUN, and they're all on board to help with this. We will have a social media person as part of our team, the documentary team, and we will have that research team that will be going and listening to communities. So a lot of planning is already starting, but we're still at the ground level, and we believe that folks like you can help us to shape this march and give your input into it and see what ideas you might have. And with that, I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Señora Olivia, está en mute.
Okay, thank you, Rosa, very much. And at this time, I'm going to ask Lupita, voy a pedirle a Lupita que nos dé un breve testimonio de su experiencia con su grupo. Y si puede identificar las personas que están en su grupo, de dónde vienen, dónde están.
Claro que sí, con mucho gusto. Bueno, gracias por la invitación. Sí, mi grupo está compuesto por mamás de las escuelas de la escuela Telfair, que antes dábamos las clases del Buen Corazón y estábamos acostumbradas a que cada equipo estaba compuesto porque sus niños estaban en esa escuela, entonces parecía más fácil estar ahí para que recogiera a los niños y empezar a dar las clases, ¿verdad? Ahora cambiamos de grupos y nos unimos de varias escuelas. Y en mi grupo están mamás de la escuela de la Zaire, ¿es la?
Dyer.
La Dyer, perdón, gracias. Sí, de la Dyer está compuesto por 2 mamás y sus nombres son María Elena Ortiz y Rosa Vargas. Y también está otra mamá que es de mi mismo equipo y estábamos en la escuela O'Melveny y es María Mesa. Y Mari Guerrero, que también estaba en la escuela de San Fernando y ahora forma parte de mi grupo. Y hace una experiencia muy bonita porque pues estábamos acostumbradas, no nos había tocado trabajar juntas, ¿verdad? En las lecciones. Y es muy bonito porque pues nos estamos conociendo y adaptando nuevamente en estas clases que han sido muy satisfactorias para nosotros porque los participantes han respondido muy bien, ¿verdad? De lo que son las clases de Slicker. Nos estamos aprendiendo mucho de ellos y pues, gracias.
Y los participantes, las que están tomando la clase, ¿de qué escuelas son?
Las participantes que están tomando la clase con nosotros, bueno, están, ¿cómo se dice? Las juntamos. Les hablamos nosotros, como ya teníamos sus teléfonos, tratamos de reunirlas y de igual manera hay participantes de la escuela de San Fernando, de la escuela O'Melveny y también tenemos participantes de Riverside. Entonces, como ya no sé si comentaron de un proyecto que estamos realizando y es muy bonito cómo las mamás ya se han organizado y están haciendo proyectos ambientales que próximamente nos van a presentar y trata también de cómo cuidar el medio ambiente, ¿verdad? Entonces están tratando de limpiar parte de su lugar donde viven, de su comunidad y van a tomar fotografías del antes y el después. Y es muy, muy interesante porque están también involucrando también a su familia, a la comunidad alrededor. Y es un ejemplo que al hacerlo están dando para que las demás personas también lo hagan, ¿verdad?
Ok, gracias, Lupita. Ahora, Soko, ¿está lista?
Sí, claro que sí. Pues nosotros tenemos un grupo de mamás, somos 5 que está compuesta por dos abuelas, ¿verdad? Ya de la señora Macaria, que tiene 70 y tantos años, no recuerdo cuántos dijo.
76, creo.
76. Francis Salcedo, que es una de las que comenzamos con el grupo, que tiene 70, ¿verdad? Yo que tengo 63. Y 2 mamás jóvenes, Marina y Carolina. Nosotros tenemos un grupo que están 5 madres de Washington State, una mamá de Oregon, 5 de México y están 4 de aquí de Pacoima, San Fernando, 2 de Pacoima, una de San Fernando y una de aquí de Arleta. Y una mamá que comenzó de Texas, ¿verdad? Así que es interesante ver que no importa en el lugar que estemos, ni en el país que estemos, la preocupación es la misma. En México está una joven que tiene su bebé apenas 1 año, ¿verdad? Y en todo es la preocupación porque ellos tienen también un proyecto que quieren restaurar una montaña que está ahí donde viven. Y hoy nos estaba comentando que ellas hicieron una carta para pedir ayuda al presidente, pero como ellas no votaron por ese presidente, les negó la ayuda, ¿verdad? No les quiere dar árboles. Es un pueblo muy chiquito, pero lo interesante es ver que las mamás son 3 jóvenes y una adulta, una señora ya de 66 años, pero todos tenemos la misma preocupación, ¿verdad? Todos cuando recibimos la información, todos queremos hacer algo por el medio ambiente. Gracias. Hay mucho que hablar, pero gracias.
Gracias, Soco. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Lo que quiero decir es que han sido muy nobles en venir en esta noche a estar aquí con nosotros y dar su testimonio de lo que están experimentando como líderes y como maestras, ¿no? Maria Reza, I wanted you to know that Soco was in the first class of the UCLA project. And so that happened more than 25, I don't know, 30 years ago. So Soco has continued to be a leader.
More than 30 years, Olivia.
More than 30 years. Soco has been a student. And so she was in our first
her children grew up and I'm sure they went on to study.
Yes, yes. Sus hijos ya han crecido y han estudiado y ya son adultos, ¿no, Soco?
Sí.
Sí.
Ya el mayor tiene 43 y la menor tiene 33.
Pues muchas felicidades con sus hijos.
Gracias, y yo ahorita que...
Es porque tuvieron usted una madre, un ejemplo para ellos.
Gracias, ahorita que miré a la señora Reza me estaba acordando de que ella fue la que nos apoyó mucho cuando comenzamos en la escuela Shar.
Sí.
¿Verdad? Y perdón, la primera presentación que hicimos como madres fue en una conferencia en San José de matemáticas. Y nada más estaba ella y una mamá. Era la primera vez que las mamás presentaban en una conferencia. Me acuerdo que nos poníamos tan nerviosas cuando la vimos ahí sentada y después ya tomamos las clases con ustedes, pero es gracias a ustedes, ¿verdad? A muchas de ustedes.
No, es gracias a ustedes. Y cómo apoyaron a sus hijos también todos esos años.
Gracias.
Por eso tienen tanto éxito hoy. But there was way back in the 80s, I think it was, or the 90s, there were lots of learning groups, and the parents at that time we started parent centers. And San Fernando, by the way, San Fernando Elementary was a pioneer parent center. It had the first Mrs. Bettis. You know, she had like 10 kids. You know, Rick Bettis, who is now the filmmaker, was the youngest of the group. But the parents were very interested in knowing how to help their children learn how to read. So we approached UCLA, and we had some connections with UCLA because some of the teachers were taking those same classes. So they actually built a curriculum to teach parents how to teach reading so that they can help their own students. And all the parents that were involved, and there were about 30 of them at my particular school anyway, had children who went on to the university. It's a wonderful testimony to what education can be. And all of this started also with a young teacher called Rosa Furumoto, who was at Sharp Elementary. And she was the one who started this group. So she's been working at this for the last 40 years or so, because she was a classroom teacher who went out of her way beyond the classroom to bring and get parents involved in the learning of their children. So it's wonderful to see that continuing. It's a testament to all of them.
And it's an inspiration to all of us, who are,
Yes.
have been, worked with children in education, we're professionals, but, to me, I'm still learning, and I'm learning from these ladies, these leaders who have a lot of ganas. There is no obstacle. There is no, fence that they cannot cross.
No.
And they just have a lot of courage, and they just have a lot of dedication. And so I just wanted to share this with you, Comisión, and I hope that we really consider participating and being part of getting the enthusiasm going. When people come together, they can make a difference. Juntas venceremos is our conference, our conference motto. And I think that, we have an opportunity here to put into practice what we say many times, that we want to better our community. So, and with what these ladies are doing in forming these groups that are in different places, that's what I can't even tell you how exciting it is. And that these students that they have in Mexico and in Washington, they ask for their homework or their reading ahead of time because they want to be prepared when the lesson is given. And then they look on the internet and they get more information. And so some of the leaders have given testimony that as they give the class, these students that are taking the classes teach them. They're that enthusiastic about it. And they're going to have projects that they're going to implement in the community. And so, it's just, it never ends. They just keep on being very wonderful and marvelous individuals that really care, but also they walk the walk. And at this time, I just want to ask if anybody has a question for Rosa, who is still here. And I want to thank you, Rosa, because I feel it was really an imposition on asking you to do this during your vacation. But I saw it as an opportunity to have Comisión involved. So thank you so much. But does anybody have a question, a comment, or anything they'd like to know more about? Okay.
I think, yeah. No, I just also wanted to say, on behalf of Comisión, thank you, Olivia, for bringing them to us and introducing us to these amazing ladies. It was very interesting. A lot of it was over my head because it's so much. It is so much, but it's certainly something that I'm glad that was introduced to us and enlightened us as to what is going on out there and just how important it, like you said, it is a crisis now. So, and it just opens our eyes to exactly what's going on and help us become more aware. So thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Olivia. This was a great presentation. Anybody else have any comments?
We'd like to be a part of their climate march. So can we say that we will participate?
Yes, you know what? I'm an organizer, so the only reason I was willing to give up my vacation time is if I can be an organizer.
Wow.
I was like, wait a minute, that's a possible group that might join us.
Well, it's certainly something that we would like to know more information about when you get a date, when you get a location. Certainly Olivia also will, I'm sure, keep us posted and keep us updated. And I think there's many more of us that really would like to participate and be more proud of.
Yeah, and also if I could just say last thing is that, in listening to you folks' meetings and, your planning and the work you're doing, which sounds so much like Father Spionero's meetings, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, who's gonna do this? Who's gonna do that? I really hear you, but I just wanna say thank you for the work you're doing. I have followed along the years, you know, the young women conference that you do at CSUN, and it's absolutely fabulous. So your work is so important. And thank you, you know, you're helping there to shape that future generation. And thank you for having an interest in participating. As we get more information, Olivia, you know, hopefully share it with you on the climate march. Yeah.
We'd like to continue partnering with you. And of course, you're more than welcome to attend our conference and be part of it as well. So,
Yeah, thank
doors
you.
open. Thank you so
Take care.
much, ladies.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Gracias por la invitación y buenas noches.
Buenas noches, Soco.
Gracias.
Lupita.
Adiós, Soco.
Muchas
Gracias,
gracias.
Lupita y Soco.
Gracias. Cuídese
Con
mucho.
gusto.
Hasta luego. Gracias, señora Lidia, y gracias a todas.
Buenas noches.
Bye.
Buenas noches.
Buenas
Buenas noches.
noches.
That was really interesting. So I'm glad we recorded it. Thank you, Joanne.
No
because
problem.
I'm going to have to replay it because it's just like there's so much. She was giving us so much information in the short time that she was on. I can't imagine. Yeah.